caffeine is the perfect product to drive a billion-dollar industry. It's addictive, it's something you consume every day, and practically everyone can drink it. They claim coffee is almost like a superfood, loaded with antioxidants and linked to benefits like increased longevity, improved mood, physical performance, and a reduced risk of various diseases. But how much of this is genuinely true, and how much is just clever marketing designed to keep you hooked? And if there are actually so many benefits, why are some of the leading scientists on these projects some of the only people that don't consume caffeine?
Most of the caffeine researchers I interviewed do not drink coffee or tea.
Now, the common narrative is that 400 milligrams of caffeine is the safe limit, which is exactly what this ABC reporter drank.
Doctors say caffeine, which is a drug, is safe for adults who consume up to about 400 milligrams a day. That's about 4 cups of coffee. ABC's Lisa Stark drank that much and took an MRI to show what it did to her brain. Here's before, and here's after. Her blood flow went down 40% and her blood pressure shot up.
And this isn't a standalone case. In this 2009 study, participants were given almost half the amount of the daily safe limit and still saw an average of a 27% reduction in blood flow to the brain. So why does this matter?
Low blood flow is the number one brain imaging predictor of Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
How do you get low blood flow? Caffeine.
Oh, shit.
But if caffeine reduces blood flow to the brain, why does it make you feel smarter and give you a boost of energy? Adenosine. It's the chemical in your brain that regulates your sleep-wake cycle, helps you feel calm, and protects your brain from stress. So by blocking out this chemical, could caffeine turn you into an overly anxious, stressed out person who has panic attacks for no reason? Well, more on that later. But what exactly is caffeine? Caffeine is actually a natural pesticide that the plant produces to stop animals from eating it. That's right, that magic high that you get in the morning is actually just a chemical produced by the plant to specifically repel insects and wreak havoc on animals. But here's the thing, all plants produce chemicals like this to protect themselves from being eaten. In fact, 99.99% of the pesticides we consume are already naturally occurring within the plant themselves. And here's where it gets interesting. In botany, the study of plants, it's well known that the part of the plant with the highest concentration of these defense chemicals is actually the seed. Why? Because plants want to protect their seeds, their future offspring. That's why this part of the plant is loaded with chemicals like tannins, oxalates, and, of course, caffeine. These chemicals are often overlooked because they don't just kill us outright like they do insects. So we just assume that they're harmless. People might say that these chemicals have a hormetic effect, meaning that in small doses they might actually make us stronger and healthier. But the reality is a lot more complicated than that.
So this is the study from Professor Bruce Ames from Berkeley. This was published in 1989, and he showed that just the natural plants and vegetables contain 10,000 times more naturally occurring pesticides by weight than the industrial pesticides that we were using on them, and that they were orders of magnitude times more likely to cause cancer.
Okay, so while the effects of these anti-nutrients are still debated, we can't deny that they're actually there. And even if they do have a hormetic effect, meaning that these small doses might help our bodies build resilience, we still have to consider the real issue: what coffee does to your stress levels. Picture your typical day, full of, well, stress. You've got work to handle, school to manage, and of course, those people on the road who just don't know how to drive.
Hey, there's no road here!
And of course, in the morning or sometime during the day, you just need that cup of coffee to help you get through it all. After all, these everyday situations can be tiring, so a little cup of joe couldn't do any harm, right? When you drink coffee or caffeine, your body starts pumping out stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. So this basically puts your body into a fight or flight response. Yes, the same response your body would have used tens of thousands of years ago when you came across something that might end your life. Maybe not the best way for your body to function when you're already dealing with these stressors of modern life. This happens because caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors, as we mentioned earlier. Receptors that are essential for relaxation. So by default, the mechanism which makes you feel alert and awake is also putting you into a heightened state of stress. Of course, with our bodies now pumping with stress hormones, it's not so surprising that this 1984 paper found that caffeine not only increased anxiety, but also depression and hostility. And it's not just for a short period of time. It can be up to 18 hours before your cortisol levels start to come back down. This prolonged elevation can lead to your body storing more fat, particularly around your gut. But it doesn't just stop at getting fat and anxious. The effects of caffeine are nearly identical to the effects of a panic attack. In his book, Caffeine Blues by Stephan Chernisky, discusses how countless people have reduced or even completely cured their panic disorders simply by eliminating coffee. And just because it didn't give you panic attacks and anxiety before, doesn't mean that it won't do it now.
I struggled through my work for 3 hours. It was impossible to concentrate. My head was pulsing. I felt my veins in my head throbbing.
It started with a hangover-like headache the moment that I got up.
What I want to do now is I want to talk about the cons, and the short-term cons and then the long-term cons of not drinking coffee. The long-term cons are very minimal. The short-term cons are huge, okay? But the long-term benefits are insane.
Withdrawals. Yes, coffee is a drug, and when suddenly stopped, most people feel withdrawals. A pounding headache, fatigue, and an inability to concentrate. It's not a fun experience, but here's the good news. It doesn't have to be this way. By the end of this, I'll tell you exactly how you can break free from this addictive bean without suffering through the worst of these symptoms. But now you may be thinking, but I love the taste. I love waking up in the morning and having something warm. In Stephan Chernisky's book, he states, research has proven that people acquire tastes and preferences based on the psychopharmacological action of caffeine. What this basically means is that the poetic aroma and great flavor of coffee that you love so much are actually tied to addiction. The only reason you find the smell and taste so appealing is because caffeine is addictive. Think back to when you were a kid. Did you ever try coffee? If you ever did, you were probably wondering why so many people drink such a bitter and disgusting bean juice all of the time. But over time, you likely started adding cream and sugar, and before long, you began to enjoy that sweet taste of coffee. What you might not realize is that your love for coffee's flavor was shaped by the caffeine itself, an addiction that slowly made you crave what you once found bitter. And the best way to come off coffee is to gradually wean off over a couple of weeks like this. This method helps your body adjust without experiencing the worst withdrawal symptoms. Take this study for example. It shows that people who don't consume caffeine actually performed worse on cognitive tasks after drinking coffee. What the researchers found was that the only reason people think they perform better with coffee is because it temporarily relieves their withdrawal symptoms. So what does this mean? Essentially, if you drink a lot of coffee, it just brings you back to your baseline. But if you don't normally drink coffee, and then you have some, your performance usually suffers. Even if coffee brings you back to your baseline, you're likely only operating at 80 to 90% of what you're truly capable of. Now think of it this way, does something that reduces blood flow to your brain by 40% really seem like the ideal way to maintain long-term brain function? Now, I'm not saying I'll never drink coffee again, and of course, you're free to make your own choices. But it's important to be mindful of what this substance really is and how it impacts our lives. If you remember earlier when I talked about the plant toxins in coffee beans, you might be curious to learn more. So if you want to dive deeper into what these toxins are and why some people choose to eliminate them completely, be sure to check out this video right here.